one, I casted her beating effort. And I got to say, I was just like, whoa. Because, you know, obviously we look at where effort is now.
Yeah, he's insane.
And he's very good. So, you never know what to expect. You know, and obviously pressure can be different for people in different atmospheres, playing against different opponents. The pressure's probably going to be on her a little bit more because Koreans are not supposed to lose to non-Koreans.
Yeah.
But usually at events where Koreans are not supposed to lose to non-Koreans, it's something like WCG, where it's basically the 3 best Koreans in Korea at the time against the best foreigners, which is kind of a, you know, not a fair match. Whereas I think if you took, you know, the below the top 20, then you might have some closer games. Because even in the top, when you bring those top 3 Koreans, you do see some upsets.
Yeah, occasionally.
I mean, I remember casting Silent Control against
Android.
Yes, Android, and as well as another game. Why is his name escaping me? Against Reason. Casting a game on the stage on that. So you never know. Anything can happen.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, Kobo can beat Midas. Anything can happen.
Anything can happen.
Especially when you're Protoss.
Yeah.
So, all right. Are there any other projects you have going on right now?
The guys that made the site Tasteless Gaming for me, by the way, I really appreciate that. I've been talking to them, and I'm going to try to put a new type of strategy forum on there, and that's going to be in the works in the next few weeks, and you're going to be part of that as well.
Cool.
Now that you know.
Thank you.
Basically, it's just going to be a strategy forum where everybody can read, but only certain people can post, and it's going to be a very small number. Because I've noticed one thing about StarCraft, and let's face it, the game is very, very hard to learn.
Very hard.
It is the hardest game ever made.
Of course.
Multiplayer competitive game. Is that if you want to learn about the game, the vast majority of strategy forums are poisonous. They are poisonous.
I agree with you.
they are wells of misinformation.
They are cesspools.
Yes.
Disgusting newbies.
So I thought, let's get a place where everybody can read, but only very qualified players can partake in that. And I know Reckrel has already said he'd be willing to help out in this as well. You know, Reckrel's quite smart. And a few of our other friends. And I'm basically picking out people who I think are good, but are also articulate. So maybe not G5. No. Actually, I think he would actually be quite useful as well. But I want to do something like that where you can really see in-depth conversation between players of a high caliber, and you can learn from that. Because I think there's this big stigma that the way that people actually get good at StarCraft is they play 10 hours a day. That's not true.
Yeah.
I mean, it certainly helps to play a lot, but you also get burnt out. That's one of the reasons why we don't see the same people on top, is because there's such a high burnout rate, because people are having to overtrain. The reason why the Koreans are the best is because you have a dozen to 24 people living together who can share information and say, no, this is how you view the match. No, this is your hockey setup.
Yeah.
This is what you tell yourself before you go into the booth and play the game. And that is what helps. I mean, in our experience, when the USA was not always a very good StarCraft country. It was very disconnected. It was a bunch of mini groups, of 3 to 4 guys training together. And when the United States finally got one big ventriloquist channel that only certain people were allowed to play in, and everybody was just spilling information about what they knew.
Oh yeah, we jumped right up the scope at that point.
I mean, China's quite good as well, but I think the U.S., if you look at just the number of players, and I mean, look, obviously we're both Americans, so we have some bias here. But the last 2 pro gamers to come down here were Americans, and I mean, I think the States is a very strong country, but I think we've learned why. We've learned how to do that, and that's something I kind of want to share with other people. Is see top level players, in just talking about this.
That's very true, because in Korea, that's one of the big reasons why top non-Koreans, no matter how much you play, you cannot get to the Korean level, because there's no transfer of information. No one can do it alone.
Yeah, well, half the time the people that are in your area that you're training against, or they could be your training partners, are your opponents.
Yeah, that's true too.
I remember there was even a point where, Sean and I, during WCG 2005, when we found out we were going to be pitted against each other, it was funny because we were exchanging all this information. Then when we found that out, it was like, whoop, we moved our computers to different sides of the house, and then, and it's unfortunate because when we're training together, we can learn so much more. So, yeah, that's basically that.
All right, now speaking of Sean, who is Day 9, for those of you who don't know.
My little brother.
Yeah, one of the greatest Zergs of all time outside of Korea.
He's very good.
This WCG boycott thing that he's brought up. WCG USA, for what is it, the 7th year in a row has gotten worse. Really quite astounding. And he has actually put together a boycott. You want to say something about that?
You want to start?
Well,
I'm the caster for WCG. So.
Yeah, it's. What are your thoughts? Is this going to work out? Is this going to get anything changed?
I don't know. WCG and WCG USA are actually different things, which I think needs to be clarified. First of all, WCG outsources different organizations, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe this is how it works. They outsource different organizations. I know there have been problems before with WCG USA. I know every single player that you can ask that's participated has had expressed frustration.
Yeah.
And before I go any further, I want to say I think WCG is a great organization.
Oh, of
gotten
course.
to meet.
They've kept our community really
I
alive.
mean, that was our big tournament.
Absolutely.
That was our big tournament.
The most important thing in the foreigner scene is WCG. So I mean, we want for WCG to improve, of course.
Exactly. Yeah.
They are not listening quite enough, I think, especially in the USA scene right now.
Well, there's been too many problems. For instance, in my experience, because as you know, I eventually had to stop playing and start casting. Because when I tried to do both in Vegas, I mean, I think the outcome of both are pretty bad. I couldn't split my attention like that.
Yeah.
But I mean, even when I was at the U.S. Invitational, and I had to play against Slog, and the computers kept crashing, and I had to keep rematching him, and I basically won every single game. And Slog's not a bad player. I had to play very hard against him, but I mean, there was this moment where I was like, okay, I'm in this odd situation. How many build orders do you think I had planned? For Gaia, against, and eventually he was switching his race because he, had run out of his build orders. Because if you're not familiar with RTS games, most of the stuff you see is scripted in the guy's head. Very rarely do you see people just playing on the fly. I think that ended with Guillaume Patry.
About 10 years ago.
About 10 years ago. So issues like that, or issues like when I had to do the WCG online ladder, this was the only year I attempted to participate and wasn't able to qualify because the online ladder was at 2 in the morning or 1 in the morning, Denver time, and it was a 1 hour window of time, and it was the American turn. It makes no sense.
Yeah,
I mean, it would make sense if it was like 5 o'clock, for the people that are in California, and it's going to be later on if you're in New York, but it's at least a reasonable time. But at that time, I wasn't a full-time caster. I had a summer job at my university moving furniture, and I'd wake up at 7 a.m. and I mean, I couldn't do it.
So Tasteless wasn't always immortal?
I was not immortal. I had to sleep. Well, I tried to be immortal for about 2 days before I almost died at work. So I think there are some problems like that, and I don't think they've been dealt with as well as I guess they could have been, because Sean has been to more WCGs than I have. He was going to those before I was. Really. And he's had more success, as you know. He's won and represented the United States. So there is a degree of frustration, I think, with the United States community. I don't know if boycotting it is the right thing, but I think what's more important than